Assalamualaikum everyone. We'll continue from where we left behind. Earlier, we were looking at or we were comparing true Murabaha from the artificial Murabaha. I was saying that artificial Murabaha is a Murabaha transaction where there is no actual purchase of the asset by the bank from the supplier and an actual sale of the asset to the customer on deferred payment. Because there is no evidence that the bank have actually hold the asset on their balance sheet that will translate into some form of capital requirement accorded by the regulator, because the bank is a deposit-taking bank that uses deposit fund to do the Murabaha or the artificial Murabaha. So the characteristic of the artificial Murabaha is quite clear. And at the end of the day, we can see that it has some kind of interest-like effect or riba-like effect, because the sale price of the artificial Murabaha has actually stated the amount of facility accorded to the customer plus the profit margin. So when the selling price is dictated and defined, where the customer has an obligation to pay off the facility based on the selling price, which is actually the debt that the customer now owe the bank to be paid over the tenure of the facility. So that implies also that the profit margin as well as the amount of money given to the customer is guaranteed to the bank. So the bank will be able to recover the full amount of the facility plus the profit margin based on the contractual agreement, based on the sale price or based on the selling price. So the selling price will assert or will make it certain that the repayment of capital is guaranteed, plus with the payment of profit. And all of that would be stated upfront in the contract of Murabaha or in the contract of artificial Murabaha, because the contract, when the contract of sale is executed, the sale is based on the selling price that is equal to the sum of the facility amount, which is capital, plus the profit margin, and both of which are guaranteed, because these are the amount of debt that the customer owes the bank that must be paid in full over the maturity of the facility. So that is artificial Murabaha. And that would be the pricing mechanism that we will be examining, because that has been the dominant product offering in all Islamic banks in the Muslim country today. The other Murabaha financing, or it is called commodity Murabaha, and that is Tawarruk. And it is a facility, a Murabaha facility, where it is entirely different from true Murabaha and from the artificial Murabaha, because the Tawarruk provides liquidity, right? The objective of the facility, of the Tawarruk facility, is to provide cash or liquidity to the customer, so that the customer will now go to pay the supplier themselves, to purchase the asset they intended to own. So in true Murabaha and in artificial Murabaha, we are looking at the bank as the selling party of that underlying asset. That could be, landed property, it could be machinery and equipment, or any tangible asset. So the bank will be the party that will sell this tangible asset to the customer, right? Whereas in Tawarruk, there is no intention to supply this tangible asset to the customer, but only to provide cash proceed or liquidity for the customer to buy the goods directly from the supplier. So it is very similar to a loan contract or interest-bearing loan contract, where the bank will provide a loan or liquidity to the borrowing customer, from which the customer will take this cash money and pay the supplier or pay the developer, right? So this commodity Murabaha facility, is very, very similar to the loan facility. But then the Tawarruk or commodity Murabaha is a sale, right? It's a sale, it is not a loan. And thus, there is justification to say that it is not riba, right? But then if you look at the term and condition of the Tawarruk or commodity Murabaha, we can see that there is a real sale of some kind of underlying asset, and that will be the CPO. In the case of Malaysia, the banks are using the crude palm oil as the underlying asset for the Tawarruk or commodity Murabaha transaction, right? So the bank, there's a buy and sell of CPO with ownership transfer from the selling party to the buying party. So the bank will purchase the CPO from the vendor through the brokers, and with the intention for resale or to sell the CPO to the buying party on deferred payment. Right? And the buying party, after receiving ownership of the CPO, will sell the CPO to the third party, to vendor 2, in order to obtain the liquidity with which the buyer will pay the supplier or to pay the property developer, right? And we can see that in this Tawarruk transaction, the CPO is put on the banking book. So even though, the time taken between the master purchase agreement and master sale agreement are, it can be in the hour or it can be days, but still you can see that there is actual buy and sell, where the asset will be put on the banking balance sheet. But the interesting situation here is that even though there is asset ownership, where asset is put on the balance sheet, there is no exposure of ownership risk. When the CPO, in the sense that when the bank is the legal owner of the CPO, but at the same time, the bank is not exposed to ownership risk. This is different from the true Murabaha or from the MPO, where when the bank take the asset on their balance sheet, then automatically the bank will face ownership risk, right? Because it will take time for the bank to sell or to do the resale, right? So because of the exposure to ownership risk, then there is some kind of capital charges on the asset that can be exorbitantly high. But when it comes to Tawarruk or commodity Murabaha, there is no capital charges, because the fact that the ownership, the value of the CPO is put under a stable system from the structuring component of the tawarruk, where the CPO price of the CPO price in the master purchase agreement is made equal to the CPO price for the master sale agreement. So this so-called artificial determination of pricing in the MSA has been able to secure some kind of stability to the CPO system, whereby the purchase of the CPO and the sale of the CPO, the value of the CPO purchases and the value of the CPO sale are equal, and as such there is no tendency or no possibility that the value of the CPO in the MSA will go up or come down because the prices of the CPO in the MSA has been made equivalent to the CPO prices for the MPA, right? So because of the fact that there is no ownership risk, so there is no capital charges even when the CPO is put on the banking book, right? So no capital charges as there is no exposure to ownership risk. So the spread of the tawarruk exposure will only be based on the financial risk, that is credit risk. So profit rate, as we know, is equal to the cost of fund plus the spread, and the spread can be due to credit risk, it can be due to business risk, liquidity risk. But for the tawarruk financing, the extra profit charged onto the facility will be coming from the credit risk alone, because there is no business risk due to the fact that the business risk has been nullified, or it has been so-called cancelled due to the equalization of the CPO prices in the MPA and MSA prices. So we can see that still there is a visibility of riba-like effect in tawarruk, because when we look at the sale price of the tawarruk, you know, it is essentially a debt owed by the customer. So the customer on day one, when they enter into the tawarruk contract, they will owe the bank the sum of the facility amount plus the profit margin to be paid over the tenure of the facility, and the amount of debt that the customer owe the bank is essentially the selling price that must be paid, paid in full amount over the tenure of the facility. So the customer has that so-called obligation to pay off the debt that is comprising of the facility amount, which imply that the facility amount is guaranteed and the profit margin is guaranteed, because when the customer enter into the tawarruk contract, the selling price has been specified upfront, and that also implies that the capital plus profit margin are both guaranteed in the tawarruk contract, and that is why there is some form of visibility of riba-like effect in the commodity Murabaha. So we will look into pricing as we move on, but our focus will be on the artificial Murabaha. Okay guys, I'll see you again in the next video. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.